What's up, guys? It is Sam, and today is 6/16, and I wanted to talk about this idea I had. So, when running a company or a business, a lot of the times people think about it in one direction, just a very, I guess you could say, linear fashion, or one-dimensional might be a better way of describing it. Think of the management philosophy of Jack Welch, where he's running one. He was an iconic CEO back in the day, and he would fire or get rid of, or I believe it was just firing the bottom 10% of the workforce. So that works when you have a company with, tens of thousands of employees. However, I think a potentially more thoughtful or prudent, or just an idea, I guess. I think you could get better results by, think about when you have somebody who performs very well in role number A. So they perform well in number A, in role A, and then what happens is somebody's like, oh, well, you should be in role number B, right? Because that's the next one up, and you get 67 cents more per hour, or whatever the case is. So this person gets promoted, and then they're in role B now, and they do that well, and then they get promoted to role C, and role C is maybe more of a leadership role, or just has other skill sets. But what happens at role level C, the person above, right, C and then D, the leader in D, and this is just one of the possible things, right? But I've seen this personally, and I've had a lot of jobs. So I'm 34, and I've had, I don't know, 7, 10, something ridiculous number of jobs over the years. And there's a point at which the person who is direct supervisor doesn't necessarily have the tools or the skill set to develop and nurture that person below them, and that runs into a wall, or that person is just not fucking good enough, right? And that's kind of where this idea, the birth of this, came from. And thinking about Jack Welch, where he would just let go of that bottom 10% of the workforce. Now, I don't think that letting go the bottom 10% of the workforce would necessarily work for every company, right? Like, if you have a company and you only have 500 people, like, you know what I mean? That might be more detrimental, maybe laying off the bottom 1 or 2 people in each category. Or if you think of a organization as a very, if you took a cross-sectional slice of the organization and you did that at the fattest section of the company, and then you adjust it accordingly based upon the different levels, if that makes sense. So cross-sectional would just be like the widest section of the company, where there's the most personnel. And instead of letting those people go, looking at the bottom 10% of role number D, so hopefully you're following along. Role D is chronological order, or the order of A, B, C, D, right? So A would be like the starting type position, and then D would be a higher level position. So at any one of these, we'll just assume that C and D is the fattest part of the company if you look at it on a cross-sectional level from a personnel standpoint, meaning that level between C and D, or say C is the widest, that population group of jobs has, 37% or 48% or 63% of the entire population of workers at this company, hypothetical company, right? And then the next one up has a few less, right? Think of it as like, say, store managers versus like district managers or something. And the population group drastically drops from that level to this. However, I think a lot of companies will look at the top performers in the, say, branch manager group, and they will try to, if it's whether the person wants it or not, hopefully there's a little bit of self-awareness and conversation around this, but they will bring them forward, right, to the next group. And I think that this is done, relatively intelligently with some companies. But what I don't think happens is the reverse of that, right? So say if you go from, just hypothetically, you have 10,000 at that branch manager level, right? Think of like Starbucks or whatever. I think they have 20,000 locations, or some crazy high number. And then when you go from 20,000 like branch manager level to the district manager level, and that goes down by a factor of fucking 2 or something. So you go from 20,000 to say 2,000, right? Now, what about taking the bottom 10% of that next level, right? And anybody who's been around the block for fucking half a second knows that there's at least 50% of people who are just like, don't give a fuck. They're just not engaged. They don't care. They have other things going on. They have other priorities, like whatever. There's no judgment. That's just life. Just anything that you do, whether it is in a job or an organization or in school, from my experience, there's always about 50% of people who just don't give a fuck at all and don't barely try or anything. And then you'll have, another 20 to 40% who kind of slightly put in a little bit of effort, you know what I mean? And then you'll have like the top 10%, maybe 15%, maybe 5% who actually try. Like actually put in effort. They're purposefully, intentionally making decisions to be better and make the people around them better and the organization better. So say in that example, right, we have 20,000, then we have 2,000 district managers. Taking that bottom 10% or 5%, whatever that number is, it doesn't have to be arbitrary. There can be a thoughtful consideration of what would be the most impactful in a positive manner. And taking that, just in this example, 200 of the bottom performing district managers, or maybe that's broken down into regions or something, right? So you have 4 regions, hypothetically, we'll say, and then you have 500 district managers per something along those lines. It would probably be much greater than that. Maybe it would be like 100 per or something like that. And you take the bottom couple from every one of those and you put them back into that role before that, right? So you have the district manager and you have that honest conversation around like, hey, there's 2,000 district managers and you're 1998th. Like that's how shitty you are doing as a district manager. Like I understand there's circumstances that you think are out of your control, or that like this, that, and the other thing came along, or you stubbed your toe and you can't fucking do shit. Whatever the case is, like I get it. But you got to go down to a branch manager. Your pay, your perks, all that's going to stay the same for the next, say, 24 months or something like that, right? So, and then they can be like on a short list if they are able to potentially perform, right? And at the end of the 2 years, if they're able to perform, like they can be on a short list to come back up, or something, because there's a I think a lack of intelligent, thoughtful conversation around that portion, where the focus tends to always be if you were to say look at something like this, right? Say this is the population group, right? And this is the bottom 10% over here, and this is the top 10%. Where from my experience at the 10 plus companies that I worked at, the most amount of focus is always on the top 10%. Where if there's like these people, yes, they need it, but they're internally driven to be successful, or strive for more, or push themselves, or make the fucking decision that's going to have a much more highly impactful financial return on the company, whether that's, you know, better training with their peers, or helping customers more, or a different process to do something more efficiently. But this group right here, to have that actual thoughtful conversation is like, hey, fucking Joe, you suck as a district manager. I'm not going to fire you. Like, you might not just have the support you need, or whatever the case is. And these are probably, honestly, conversations that should have happened a long time ago, right? And this doesn't necessarily like, give that person could be there for at least a year, right? And then take them, like, if they've been in that role for a year, and move them down to the branch manager level, keep their perks and everything else the same for 2 years, allow them to, like, have the opportunity to really excel in that role, and maybe they can be on the short list or be in the top certain percentage. But we're going to give John the opportunity to do your role and see if they're able to perform better. And I think that there's a dichotomy, or where I think there's a lack of conversation around the honest conversation around people having a dialogue of honesty, where people are not fucking performing at all, and allowing somebody else to come in, because otherwise it just goes on and on and on and on. And think about the effect that has on the morale of people that see this person as a district manager, or whoever it is at that next level, and they're like, wow, I could easily do the job better than them. And their balloon gets deflated, and they're like, okay, well, peace, because, like, I have to deal with this person that you know what I mean? I'm more capable and more engaged and all these other things in the process. And it's not a true meritocracy in the sense that the best rises to the occasion. And I think putting more honest communication in any organization will probably be an amazing thing to happen. So using that as a way to facilitate the placing of people where they're actually going to be able to provide the most value, right, I think would be a tremendous thing. I know this video wasn't super succinct, but I think that bringing more value in the conversation, especially at that fucking lower end, would just be tremendous. Instead of being like, hey, fucking Joe, you're not hitting your fucking numbers. You need to do something different or whatever. And then literally it's just excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse. Like, maybe they don't have the support or whatever the case is, but then take these people and put them back down in here. Like, and if their pride is hurt, like, that's where that honesty in terms of the communication comes in. Like, you fucking suck. Like, have that conversation. You know what I mean? Sarah, your 2000th DM. There's 1,999 other DMs who are better than you, district manager. There's 19,900, and you've been in that bottom quartile for the last 18 months. You've been with the as a DM for 2 years. Like, I think there's some issue here that needs to be addressed in an intelligent manner and a thoughtful way. And I think a lot of times the connotations associated with thoughtfulness is soft, or is not doing the prudent thing from a financial standpoint. And I think that's just a naive way of looking at things, because I think having a thoughtful conversation around that individual can yield tremendous ROI, because clearly they're not engaged, or they're just not fucking capable at that level. I don't know. I'm curious to know what you guys think down below in the comments. Let me know. I think this could be a huge win for some companies who tried to implement something like this. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe if you like this type of content. Share this with somebody else. If you know somebody else who is in the role, who is able to actually implement something like this, share this video with them, or share my contact information with them. I'd love to chat with them. Peace.